Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, would you do a roll call of the board, please?
Supervisor Milky?
Here.
Clerk Cody here. Treasurer Rogers?
Here.
Trustee Lannon is excused. Trustee Lay?
Here.
Trustee Over?
Here.
And Trustee Thering?
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We have a light agenda. I like it. Happy to entertain any motions regarding the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I support.
Motion by Rogers, support by Lay. Any comments, debate? All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We have an agenda. This evening, there is no presentations nor public hearings, so that takes us to public comment, item 7 on the agenda. Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up public comment at 7:01 p.m.
We have 3 people online, but I don't see anybody raising their hands.
So for those that are connected remotely, there should be a tool at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. I'm happy to give it just a moment for you to do that if you so please. We do have some members in the audience. I see neither of them wanting to get up and see no hands being raised remotely. Let the record show there was no public comment, and we'll close at 7:02 p.m. That takes us to item 9, reports, boards, comments, starting with the current list of boards and commissions. We've had a lot of discussion about planning commission and some delays because of lack of full board. Knowing we were going to be just one shy tonight, so this is 3 meetings in a row we haven't had a full board, which is highly unusual. I've had conversations and I'm inclined to no longer delay on the planning commission. So let me just ask this board again if there's any objections to that. With that, I would like to nominate Nathan Thompson to the Planning Commission with an expiration date of 2/15/2029.
Support.
Discussion? All I'll add is that some of our applicants have been very, for lack of a better term, aggressive, in the sense that they've been active to come here, participate, introduce themselves, and that's really appreciated from my perspective at least. No other discussion?
I would say enthusiastic rather than
That's
aggressive.
the word I'm looking for. I said for lack of a better term. That's the better term. Hearing no more discussion, all in favor of appointing Mr. Thompson to the Planning Commission, term ending February 15th, 2029, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Mr. Thompson is appointed. Secondly, we do have this other vacant seat. So with that, I would like to nominate Robert Bicking to the Planning Commission, term ending February 15th, 2027.
Support.
We have support. Again, discussion.
Appreciate Mr. Bicking's diligence in attending meetings and expressing his interest. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate the enthusiasm.
And aggressiveness.
Aggressive enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm is the correct word. I will restate that again. And with that, any other comments? All in favor of nominating Mr. Bicking to the Planning Commission, term ending February 15th, 2027, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Can I,
You may.
if you can wait until, or after the meeting, that way I can get you sworn in and then we have a book for you.
Definitely.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll jump in now as well, and I'll reach out to Mr. Thompson. There will be training available for you. There will be an onboarding packet that you'll get in addition to the swearing in. But pretty important that you at least get the basic training in. So those opportunities will be provided, and take your opportunities when you're able to. So thanks for being willing to serve.
On clarification, what was the term ending for Mr. Thompson?
2029.
2029.
One of the seats is coming up again this next February. One was being longer, which was being vacated by Ms. McDonald, and I do want to thank her for all her service. I will be reaching out to her to see if she would like to continue to stay on the ZBA, if there's no objections to that.
None.
Because she's trained in that and currently serves on that, so. All right. If there are no objections, we'll move on to board member reports. Trustee Thering, I'm going to ask.
Yep. I do not have anything to report tonight.
Clerk Cody. Trustee Olvers.
Planning Commission meets next Tuesday, March 17th. Just a reminder to wear green, if you're so inclined. And then would also mention, if this is the right spot in which to do that, I did go through the warrants today. There was one item that drew my attention, is there was a difference on the check versus the ledger, and Anna Lynch addressed that as because of the pooled funds, all three of the checks were in one item and the listings were in the other two. So kudos to her for answering that question, and I'm excited to be able to show that I was diligent too. So.
First timer.
First timer.
No longer a rookie now.
Thanks to Trustee Lay for
I should have
the
told you about the pooled checks.
in-depth orientation. Yes.
That's a good segue to Trustee Lay.
I have a CRC meeting on Wednesday of next week, so I'll have something for you next time.
Fantastic. Treasurer Rogers.
I have nothing.
Board of Review met last week just as an organizational meeting, and then we had our formal public appeals hearings on Monday and Tuesday. From Monday was 10 till 4, and then yesterday from 3 till 9. It was the lightest amount of work I think I've ever seen in front of the Board of Review. We had 3 people show up in person. And Trustee Thering, he sat on the Board of Review, so he knows how light that is. 3 in person. We had 5 appeals that were submitted electronically. So, I mean, that's pretty light. And we had, I think there were 4 poverty exemptions that were approved by the Board of Review. So we had finished most of our work by about 7 o'clock last night, and obviously stayed here in case someone showed up. But we certified the rolls, and everything looked good. I will add, I have to give our assessor credit, at least I think that's where it's deserved, because I know she handled a lot of the questions that our residents and businesses had up front, and I think that helped minimize the amount of appeals that we had, because they were able to address whatever issues they had prior to the Board of Review meeting. So kudos to our assessor. So moving on, consent agenda. Happy to entertain motions.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Sport.
Motion by Olver, support by Rogers. We've addressed the warrants already. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor of consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to our single new business item tonight. Clean Water State Revolving Fund Notice of Intent Resolution. Mr. Stuhldreher, I'm assuming you'd like to introduce this.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just a little background on this. some of you were here, others were new. As far back as the fall of 2022, there was a presentation made to the board, high level, as it related to both the Clean Water State Revolving Fund opportunities, which deals with sewer, and then the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund that dealt with water. So we kind of covered both of those back in 22, broad overview, began to set the board up for a variety of actions that would be taking place after that date. You're very familiar, I think, with the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund. That was the $10.8 million 100% grant that we received a couple years ago, and that's all water infrastructure. We've been working that over the last few years. And so now we're switching to the sewer side of things. And you may recall, that those of you that were here, that in February of 23, a contract was approved with Gordy Frazier, our engineering consultant, to complete a project plan for the sewer side of things. That was approved by the board, and that work was done. We had a meeting in April of 23 that provided the board updates on that project plan, and that also was a public, by rule, it was also a public participation meeting. So that has occurred. And at that April meeting, the board adopted a resolution approving the project plan. And then since that time, we then made application to Eagle for the sewer work. We had done the project plan, and then we began applying to the state. We applied in 2023, and we didn't make the threshold for the funding. We applied in 24, same thing. And then when we applied in 25, we did make the threshold. They have a scoring system and all that. And we were approved. The project plan was approved. We were approved for some funding, and I'll get into that in a minute. And that announcement was, I believe, in the fall of 2025. We were approved for $6,520,000. That was the amount of the project plan at the time. This came with 13% loan forgiveness. Kind of starts off, if you think about it, a $6.5 million project. All that's going to be a loan, theoretically, in your mind. Once we get to the bottom of the whole system, the whole process, 13% would be turned into a grant. So that's the loan forgiveness part. And this program provides for 2% interest on the borrowed funds, which is very low interest rate. And then we'll have an opportunity to decide later whether we want to borrow the money, if we continue to proceed, for 20 or 30 years. Those are the options that we were given. Based on that news, in November of 25, the board adopted a resolution authorizing the administration to continue these efforts and this work, interfacing with Eagle and the engineers and all the other entities that we needed to work with. The project plan, in its simplest form, is the replacement of the big screw pumps that you see at the very front end of the process. There's two of them, well, we have three, but we're looking to replace two of them in this project. A mechanical fine screen project that we talked about, and we talked about that separate from or in addition to it being part of this project plan, because it was an item that if we continued to not succeed at the state level, we were going to do anyways. So you're probably a little familiar with the fine screening part of it. And then the third component is the installation of the second sludge storage tank that Eagle back years ago had said, at some point you guys are going to need the second one, and now's the time. So that's kind of the background on the project. So now we'll move into the financing. And the item in front of you tonight is a resolution to publish a notice of intent, and a notice of intent to issue bonds in an amount not to exceed $6,520,000. And this notice, if approved, the resolution, if approved, will require the administration to publish a formal notice written up a certain way with certain point and font sizes and all that. And that is the reason that's being done, and that's required by the bond authorizing statutes at the state level. That's a notice to the citizenry, the taxpayers, the ratepayers, that the township intends to borrow the money. And that starts a 45-day clock that if the citizens choose to circulate a petition and get a certain number of signatures, then they can halt this process and require then a vote of the electorate to proceed with issuing the debt. If there's no petition filed objecting, then we just move on. But it's the formal way of noticing the ratepayers, the taxpayers, that we intend to issue this debt.
How common is it that a petition would be filed?
We do have Mr. Pat McGowan from Miller Canfield, who's our bond counsel here tonight. He may come up and speak in a moment. In my experience, and I have a fair amount of experience with issuing debt, I've never seen it. I'm sure it's happened. It's probably happened several times. But I've not seen it happen in city of Kalamazoo or city of Inkster. And I don't know if we issued debt when I was with Calhoun County or not. But I've not seen it. So in your packet, and there's a report on this that begins on page 32 of your agenda packet. There's the memo that we wrote up for you. There's the project timetable. There's a letter from Mr. McGowan with Miller Canfield. Another piece of the resolution, it states that if we expend any money prior to the issuance of the bonds, that we're able to reimburse ourselves. And that's important because the money that we spend prior to the issuance of receiving bond proceeds, if it continues to move, we're able to reimburse ourselves for those project expenses, which include engineering, legal, advertising, all that kind of thing. These are revenue bonds, so the intent would be to pay these back with sewer system revenue, which is going to be the ratepayers and the rates that you see on the quarterly sewer bill. That's part of the water bill that comes out every quarter. The funds are being provided by a state, I'll call it agency, I'm not sure if that's technically correct, but the Michigan Finance Authority, They think of them as an intermediary, a bank, if you will. They have access to funds, some from the federal, some from the state, probably some from other bond issues that get paid back, so it might act sort of like a bond revolving loan fund, if you will. That would be the purchaser of the bonds. That would be the source of the money, the cash that we would receive at closing. And so we're working with Eagle on the technical side of the project plan. Now we're starting to shift towards working also with the MFA, the financing agency authority, on the financing part. And they have their process and rules, and there's a Revenue Bond Act in this state statute that we have to follow. That's why we have our bond counsel to help us through all those steps. One of those steps is that we have to, as you might imagine, demonstrate to the finance authority our ability to service the debt. And it's not as involved as if we were issuing these bonds on the open market, where you might have to have a credit agency rating on the debt and a formal operating statement, OS. But we do have to demonstrate our ability to finance and repay this debt. And they will issue a letter to that effect. As I understand it, they either classify the borrow as, it's all investment grade, but there'd be low, medium, and high in terms of the entity's classification. So we'll have to go through those steps. If this were to continue till its finish line, we would be back in front of the board for the financing piece at a minimum. I think we have it scheduled for the summer of 2026, I think, where we'd end up asking the board to approve a ordinance that speaks to the fact that we've issued debt. We're dedicating system revenues to the debt holder, to the bond holder. That would be in the fall of, or summer of 27, or I'm sorry, 26. So that's where we're at. Again, Mr. McGow, who's a principal with Miller Canfield. Some of you, Miller Canfield was our bond counsel when we last issued debt in 2011 or 12, somewhere in there. We had a different representative from the firm. I've worked with Miller Canfield over the years, not in a number of years, but I've worked with them in the past. I've actually worked with Pat 25 years ago when we were both kind of starting out. So it's good to see him again. He's here to answer any questions you may have, and maybe Pat, we have new people. Maybe Brian was here when Miller Canfield last helped us issue debt, but go ahead and introduce yourself. And
well, great. That was a great introduction. I mean, it was a great background on this whole process. Yeah, as Mark said, I'm Pat McGow. I'm a bond lawyer. This is what I do. I help townships, cities, and villages get money for projects. That was a great overview of the project. Now, the first question that I often get with people in these things, because you've been working so many years with the applications to Eagle, is why do we need to issue a bond if we've already been approved for this loan and we know what it is? And the answer is that under Michigan law, townships can only borrow money in accordance with certain state statutes. So you can't go just sign a loan agreement. And what the state requires here, the Michigan Finance Authority requires local units to go through the issuance of a bond to memorialize the loan. They want you to go through the same steps you would if you were borrowing money on the open market for a building or a road project or something else. And that's why you have to follow this statutory procedure. So far, you've been dealing with Eagle, the applications and everything. And really, I always think of this as Eagle's dealing with the project side, and now we're going to be dealing with the Michigan Finance Authority, which is an agency of the Department of Treasury on the money. So Eagle runs the project, and the MFA makes sure that you get the money for it and then you pay it back. So this process of issuing a revenue bond is very commonly done for water and sewer projects. The township last borrowed money in 2013 using a similar process. So the township has outstanding sewer debt that was done in 2011 and 2013 for other projects. Only there, instead of borrowing the money from a state agency like this, you borrowed money from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which had a different kind of a loan program. But you still went through the same process that we're starting here tonight, which is it began with a notice of intent that says we intend to borrow, and then assuming there's no referendum, that allows you to go bid out the project and then come back later with an ordinance to authorize the bonds. As far as the question of how often is there a referendum, I would say it is very rare. It usually doesn't happen on water and sewer projects. Where I see that most commonly is maybe there's a project that people in the public feel is extravagant, like too much money for a fire station or a city hall or a township hall rehab. But I would say it happens, I don't know, less than 2 to 3% of the time. And usually it's often something else political that's going on. So, but it is a procedural step. It's very common in a lot of different bonding statutes. And that's why we're starting with this tonight, so that will allow this process to go so that you can go through. One of the things in the packet was what the state calls a milestone schedule. As you can see, there's all different items to do and due dates on them. They rigidly adhere to this, and that's why we want to kind of get this started now so that it doesn't slow things down along the way. They have a very rigid schedule that these programs only allow for closings in really 3 different quarters. You guys are currently targeted for the 4th quarter, that's a state fiscal year, which is a closing then in August. So the idea is that there's these various items to go through between now and August that will then allow for the approval of the funding, and then you can start spending money after the closing in late August or early September. So it's really teed up for you to take bids in June, bid opening, and then we would expect to come back on the financing at your July meeting to authorize a bond ordinance. And you would also at that time be approving the contracts tentatively for the project after the bids come in. Now, as far as the number, we're required to put in here the maximum amount to be borrowed. The $6,520,000 number is what was in the application. I think the current estimate is closer to 5.8. So if people are worried, why are we asking for more money than we think it is? The answer is it's to give us that cushion in case the bids come in high. But the good news is that you don't have to, that doesn't mean we're borrowing that much. It doesn't mean you're going to borrow at all. This is sort of the cap with this 45-day notice, and then we'll come back in July with the ordinance that will get closer to what we think the number is. Now the reality is the state won't let you borrow any more than what the bids add up to plus a 6% contingency. So, you know, whatever the number is actually not decided until August. So when we come back in July with the bond ordinance, it may still be a little higher than what we think it is, because they spend July kind of fine-tuning the different bids and the alternatives, the issuance costs, the engineering fees, and then they will come up with the number that you borrow. This is a little different than other bond issues, and I know the township hasn't done one directly, but if you're familiar with the schools, when you go to the bond market, in the open market, you issue the bonds and you get all the money at once, and you can invest it. This does not work that way. This is more like what happened with the USDA, which is you're going to go work on the project, invoices are going to come into the township, and then you submit those to the state, and then they send you the money monthly to pay for those. So it works on a reimbursement basis. Sometimes you pay the invoice and they reimburse. Sometimes, if they're on time, you wait for their money to come in and pay it. Either way works. But the point is, so you're only paying interest on the money as you draw it down. So the interest, you know, could be a lot less than expected depending on the timing of the draws. I will also say, by the way, that Mark mentioned you got money for the drinking water program a few years ago and you didn't have to pay it back. There are only a handful of communities each year that get 100% grant funding like that. So that's really unusual. This is the more normal model, which is they offer a low interest loan, you know, which is anywhere from 2 to 2.5%. You guys qualified for the lower number. And then a piece of it may be forgiven. This is 10 to 15%. Sometimes A couple years ago, when there was more ARPA funds, that was a bigger number. But this is pretty consistent with what we saw with most of the communities that get funded. And if you look every year when the list comes out, there's like 3 pages, maybe 120 communities apply for this funding each year. I think maybe, I don't have my notes on this year, but maybe a third of them actually get funded. So the fact that you didn't get funded those first couple years, that's pretty consistent. So, you know, it's a great deal because at 2% for 20 or 30 years, that's, you know, less than half of what a current market rate bond issue would be if you had to do this a different way. So, you know, it makes for a very, you know, efficient cost of financing for a project. So with that, I'll stop talking and answer any questions you may have about the resolution or the funding or anything else.
You made it quite clear.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'll state one thing. So, from this bond, the loan perspective, even if we just wanted to self-finance all this up front, the smart move is to take the bond. We're looking at 2% with a potential of 10 to 15% loan forgiveness. We're talking less than free money at this point. In fact, the money that we have will collect higher interest than what we're paying on the loan. I mean, what I'm saying is financially, this isn't an issue of, is it a good move to take the loan? The issue is this a project we want to do? That's my perspective. Is that how you would define some of that? Or is
Yeah,
that
I think that's fair. I mean, certainly economically, this is a great deal. And you're right that you can put cash in the system. I think of it a little different way, which is sometimes you look at a sewer system, you've got things that you're going to pay for out of cash on a regular basis. Sometimes you borrow money. If somebody's going to give you 2% money for 20 years, you finance that and then use your cash for those other things. You know, to your point. And you ask whether or not you need to do the project. That's a great first question. You guys have spent a lot of years, you know, looking at this one, and you know, these problems usually don't go away. So, but yes, I think you're right that that's a fair question to ask, and that, you know, assuming you're going to do the project, this is as good a financial deal as you're going to get.
right? Thank you.
Thank you.
I was saying that half for the public benefit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
And kudos to you guys for being patient applying for this, because I mean, this is really, you know, a low cost way. And sometimes people say, why do we need to borrow the money? And you know, the sort of the policy argument is you're making an investment into a plant that's going to be used for 30 plus years in the future. So rather than have saved up, squirreled away cash for the last 20 years, this means that the people who are going to benefit from that plant, your residents for the next 20 years, are paying the cost of building it in their regular utility bills, as opposed to the people that were here for the last 20 years. So that's why when you come to debt, I know a lot of people sometimes think there's a stigma with borrowing money, and there's good ways to borrow money for projects and there's bad ways. But something like this, especially utility debt, where it's going to be paid for by the people who are using it and benefiting from it for the next 30 years, is really a sound public policy when it comes to debt. You can't borrow money for operating costs. You can only borrow money really to build stuff that's going to be used by the community for a long time, and that's what this is.
Once we get through the timetable on page 35, what is the timetable then for the project to be completed and these new pieces in place and operational?
Kim, could you speak to that, please?
December of 2027.
Okay. A pretty close turnaround then.
It is.
About a
These
year.
projects have very tight schedules.
Okay.
As Pat referenced, when you look at that timetable, those are the dates those things are going to happen. They're very, very rigid, the time schedule.
And I assume out of the 3 big items, screws is just a matter of replacement. And I realize they're big, so it's not trivial, but that's not a long project.
Right.
And the screening process shouldn't be that long. It's probably the storage tank that's going to take the longest because of construction.
Right, the storage tank will take the longest.
Thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions for?
No.
Thank you so much
Okay.
for speaking. I
Yep.
really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
I will add finally, or lastly, that maybe the last meeting you approved a contract with United Financial Services, Don Lund, to do a cost of service study and some other financial work on both the water and the sewer system. She's part of the finance team, so, which works out well, because what she's doing will feed directly into being able to demonstrate our ability to pay, which we have to, our ability to service the debt with the finance authority as well. So we'll have current numbers, current analysis. So I'm very comfortable with how this is proceeding.
Would that also help with decision of 20 to 30 year options?
It could. And I meant to ask Pat or Kim this earlier, but I'll just ask it now. I could imagine that different components of any type of project would have different useful lives. But I'm guessing that all the project, there's either 20 or 30. There's not 20 for stage A and 30 for stage B. It's, yeah. But all these are significant pieces of equipment that have useful lives of 30 years, and the sludge storage tank probably has a useful life of, 50 or 75 or something. It's a big concrete. But I wanted to create the nexus between what we're doing from cost of service and financial analysis of the system and forecasting in the future to this project. So both right and left hands are talking to each other.
So I do remember getting the second screw pump, but I have no recollection of what year that was. But I'm curious, what was the install date of the original screw pump and then the second one that we put in? The second one was separate, right? Maybe it was I'm thinking the third one.
The third was separate. The first two were installed at the original plant, when the original plant was built in the early 2000s, 1999, 2000. Those are the two that are being replaced. The third screw pump we put in within the last 5 years.
That's the one I'm thinking of
And
then,
that's probably
yeah.
the one you're thinking of, yes.
So at this point, they're already at their about 26 year,
Yeah,
like
coming
26,
to
27 years.
They're coming to their useful life. Those are one of the highest used components at the plant. They constantly run. They do alternate, but when we have a lot of flow, all three of them could be running. So those are used all the time. So there's a lot of wear and tear on those. They take really good care of them, but we've done some maintenance to them over the years. But it's time to replace them.
Thank you. Other questions?
I do think this should have a roll call, though.
Yeah,
Yes.
write that down. Motion to approve the notice of intent resolution for the sanitary sewer system revenue bonds that will finance Clean Water State Revolving Fund Project CWSRF, not to exceed the amount of $6,520,000.
Support.
Motion by Cody, support by Thering. Further discussion? I'll just add that for me, and I think I made I know I made a comment to our treasurer earlier that whenever I look at numbers like this, I cringe because I know it's our taxpayer dollars, and we are supposed to be stewards of that. But I also know that the projects we're talking about have been on the plate for a long time. This isn't a surprise that we're doing any of this. This is good stewardship of our enterprise systems. And so for me, it really came down to the question I posed just a little bit ago, which is how we finance it. This makes like the perfect sense.
Absolutely.
It's free money, essentially. The question is, do we want to continue in the path that this board and previous boards have set for a long time? And it has my support. But, so I want the public to be fully aware this is, we're not doing something because we have the opportunity to spend some money.
Right.
We're doing this because it's been a long-term plan, and we're fortunate enough to have some nice financing mechanism to make this happen.
And it's better to replace it now than when it's broken.
That's right. And just for the screw pumps, this is for the public again. As indicated, they're reaching end of life as it is now. And if we want our sewer systems to work, our sanitary water, they're going to need to be replaced. The second mechanical fine screen is actually both an operational production issue. It'll improve the operation of the facility, but more importantly, it also is a huge safety issue for our staff that operate that, and that's very critical for me. And then obviously the sludge storage tank, as our manager indicated, that need has been identified for some time. None of these are pie in the sky kind of projects. Anything else? We have a motion on the floor. Is anybody not clear on the motion? Clerk Cody, would you do a roll call of the board, please?
Supervisor Milky,
Yes.
Treasurer Rogers,
Yes.
Trustee Lay,
Yes.
Trustee Over,
Yes.
Trustee Thering,
Yes.
and Clerk Cody, yes. All yeses.
Resolution passes unanimously. Fantastic. Our new business is done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to
Thanks,
staff for the entire
Thank
journey.
you.
Thank you for coming.
Have a nice evening. Good evening. Thank you,
Safe
Victor.
travels.
Thank you.
It is a light agenda tonight, but, so that takes us to extended public comment, which is restricted to 5 minutes regarding any item. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up extended public comment at 7:42 p.m.
I don't
Again-
see any hands.
No, but
Oh,
again,
yes,
for
yeah,
those
we're-
connected remotely, I'll give you just a moment to raise your hand if you desire. Either way, I do appreciate you attending remotely. But seeing no one stepping forward or raising their hand remotely, let the record show there's no public comment given, and we'll close extended public comment at 7:42 p.m. That takes us to item 13, manager's comments. Mr. Stuhldreher.
Thank you, and I will be brief. I just want to thank Ms. Kim Smith for covering for me in a role as acting township manager last week. Handled things, as you might expect, very well. The township is, during March, is our Care Store Drive. You'll see the display out in the lobby. Anybody, we've had folks already coming in, not doing business necessarily at the counter, but coming in because we publicized this, and we're starting to get some product that will go to the Care Store at the end of the month. And then I would like to, just as a reminder to our citizens, with spring upon us and spring cleaning going on, if you're like me, you start cleaning out garages, basements, sheds, barns, whatever it may be. And sometimes that material can end up in our yards while we're trying to figure out what to do with it. If we wait too long to get rid of it or to dispose of it properly, it could become a blight problem, and we don't want that to occur, because then the township has to go about speaking to the citizens about getting it cleaned up and trying to enforce that. So that's just a little reminder there. And that is all I have tonight.
Thank you very much. That brings us to final board member comment. Trustee Olford.
Well, I was thinking about cleaning out my garage this weekend, but now maybe I'll wait.
I just feel called out about my barn.
Nothing further to add.
Very good.
Thank you.
Trustee Lay.
Nothing.
Treasurer Rogers.
Nothing.
Clerk Cody. Trustee Thering.
All good?
I will just piggyback on the cleaning out the garage. Every year the township does an annual cleanup day in which we provide a mechanism for our residents to take care of some of that type of debris that collects in all of our lives. And I guess your comment made me think spring might be better to do cleanup day.
And I'm just looking. For when the cleanup, this year it's September 26th.
Very good. Our business is concluded, and with that, we'll adjourn at 7:45 p.m.